Hello, and welcome to the Scholé Review. This month we have Rebecca and myself, Lisa Mayeux, Rebecca Richard, and we have Sanctus, Spiritus, Scholé. And we are here to talk to you about tradition and memoria and remembrance. And this will be a two-part series. We'll talk about it this month leading into our higher feast time of Advent, but this month we're talking about the fall time and Thanksgiving. So we just wanted to remember how those feasts what those feasts look like and how that looks like in a day-to-day basis, and how we incorporate tradition and remembrance into our daily community and our daily lives. So starting out, we would like to talk about how, of course, we said that looks. And in our community, we start with the tradition from a liturgical perspective. So, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about how that looks like on a daily basis and in our community. First, we'll start with our community.
Yes. So within our community, the idea of liturgy that flows through the time that we spend communally, which is the work that we do together, and it's our work because this is where we practice beholding God, beholding order and beauty, and it just takes us outside of ourselves so that we can behold those things. And in order to do that, there is a form, and that form for us has really carried through where we pray together in community, the prayers of the church faithful. We read the Psalms responsively, and we'll also, those Psalms have informed beautiful music, and so we will sing the Psalms, but we will also sing very gospel-rich hymns as well. And so the practice of those communal times together, that liturgy is giving us the remembrances of the past.
Yes, of our forefathers, and coming from David. So we continue this tradition on a daily basis and inform our children to encourage them to practice these things too. Okay. So when we read our Psalms, right? Yeah. And then sometimes we even use those Psalms to inform, as Rebecca was saying, our hymns, and sing hymns based on those Psalms, on the Psalters type style. So from that tradition, we give them that remembrance of things past and import it into the present. And so coming from that, how does that inform them as far as that tradition of hospitality? How does it draw them into that?
I think the best, the modeling that will take place from not just the parents in leading these things, but also the kids, the children together, they have learned to receive hospitality and give hospitality. So if it's prior to that morning time in our community day, they have an opportunity to engage with each other as we engage as moms around coffee and chaos
and conversation.
Yes.
The 3 C's.
Then they've watched the workings of when we come together. There is immediate work to be done. There's unloading, there's preparation, there's lunch, there's sometimes coffee being made or a vacuum going. So to engage and throw ourselves into that work is also a preparation for the work that we're going to do as we behold these things through the liturgy. So there's the modeling of one another, prayerfully the modeling by the parents, and also with our formed conversations and ideas to share with one another. But the beautiful thing is when we see the hospitality that the children offered each other in their friendships, that comes, those that have a gifting and there's something that they've brought to share or provide or want to give to each other.
Such as like birthdays and things like that. We see that in a practical way when it comes to those things. And even in the sharing, if one person is missing their psalm, or their hymn, for example, that hospitality and community of sharing and welcoming their neighbor to that time and not pointing them out for.
That's a really good point, because liturgy is, and I've heard this before, it's really a place for those wounds and conflicts that we carry, because we're going to bring those into community as well. And so the children have had a safe place to practice being the recipient and the giver of that hospitality, and oftentimes having to take it from other people and learn.
And so in addition to that, we talked about their time in community and our time in community with the Psalms and those traditions. And we also do try to keep up the tradition on a daily basis in our homes, which will look different when we're in community as the kids are sharing and doing their practice of hospitality. We practice our hospitality among ourselves, the parents and teachers, in enriching each other in a continuing education, in the classical tradition, and imparting that into our community on a daily basis. When we're in our homes, it may look something like, simple as washing the dishes and playing some psalms or some hymns, or the lecture that we're currently all listening to, or the book that we're all currently reading and coming together and sharing.
I think the kids have adapted so well to expecting these things, from each set of moms. So like if we're transporting each other's kids in the car, it's not a big deal if they're expected to listen to a podcast, and so mom can catch up on her reading and her mother culture time. And that's another aspect that we'll also do communally as moms, is take those ideas and enrich ourselves with them in order to be better prepared to impart those things to our children. And that's the whole cycle of remembrance, because those are not our ideas and we have to be invested into them. And so that takes some intentionality. But the good thing is there's always someone who's one step ahead of you. And the moms will come into community and be prepared to share. And did you hear? And did you read? And let me show you. And you can get this book. So that's reciprocal. And that's the part of the modeling I think the children are finding. They're witnessing these things. And I don't think it's too odd for them to have conversations and be expected to engage in that.
And they're sharing their books too, not always, the ones
some more than others.
Some more than others, of course. But it's that repetition too, right? It's that repetition in our daily lives. It's that repetition of the daily tasks, the washing of the dishes, and the cooking of the meals, and those things that
provide hospitality.
That provide hospitality, right? That model hospitality, and also show that remembrance of those daily things, of the importance of the daily things, and yet the importance of where our high feasts come in.
Yeah.
Right? Because every day is not a feasting day for a higher feast. It's always a feasting and a feeding of some sort, but not necessarily, but all on different levels, right? Right. So as we enter into this time of Thanksgiving, it kind of, I feel in our community anyway, it prepares us and it opens that door for the higher feast. It's sort of like a mezzanine level almost, right? I mean, and Thanksgiving, I'm not trying to undermine it in any way, but it's not the high feast of Advent or Christmas or Thanksgiving. The high feast of Advent and Christmas and Easter. It's not that type of high feast. So it also models for them that there are different types,
right?
And that's where we get into our types, right? We have our daily type, we have our community type, and then we have
the higher feast forms,
as well. So as we come to this time, it's important, I think, for us to kind of slow down, as hard as that is, and take the time to remember, take the time to steep ourselves in tradition, and think about what that tradition looks like at each stage. That it's not the same, and it won't always look the same, and that we truly have seasons, you know.
And seasons are so good because they come back around, they refresh us. If it was always the same and mundane, then we could never really appreciate and practice being appreciative and grateful. So the seasons are good, and they teach us to order in the affections and of our heart, and we, of course, are assisted by the workings of the Holy Spirit through all of these forms, and they're a gift that He's given God's people so that we would remember Him and that we would know Him. So I think what you're saying is very true. It's stages, and so we're in that time of preparation as we enter before Advent, and we're drawing thanks. And in our community, we've kind of adapted. We didn't know it was going to be a tradition, but we've sort of turned this fall fest, we call it, sometime in October. It just works out. We just kind of clear the afternoon, and we bring, of course, the food, anything you would think of if you're having a community celebration, music of some sort. There's a lot of activity, you know, some freedom, but in all goodness, the kids will bring their sort of traditions amongst each other.
Yes, and sometimes there's some sort of performance, usually so.
Some improv.
On some level. So we have our muse and our minstrels, and we have all of the pieces of our bards and our poets and our musicians. So I just invite you to not feel pressure during this time, to take this time as entering into tradition and memoria, and give yourselves and your community that opportunity to remember in a reflective way and in a peaceful way, and without the pressure of feeling like it has to look like somebody else's celebration and someone else's tradition, but that we are focused on God's tradition. And it can be as simple as just reading the Psalms.
And that is true because it informs God's traditions. The traditions of your church tradition will inform your community traditions. And that's a beautiful part, is that's the diversity aspect of it among other communities.
And it shows the form to your students and your community so that they can enter into that remembrance and memoria of and pass it on.
Yes, because that's the whole part. That's the paideia, the passing on of the culture, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we just invite you to do that, and we thank you for spending time with us and partaking of Scholé in your community and the tradition that brings. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.